If you're thinking of closing your limited company via an insolvency route, there's something that isn't always explained clearly to directors like you up front, and it can end up costing you everything in the long run. Now, most directors, when they think about the cost of liquidating a company in the UK, they think about the headline figure, the £4,000, £5,000, £6,000 to put the business into liquidation. Now, you've probably compared a few insolvency practitioners on this figure, and you pick the one that feels affordable, and you think that's all it's going to cost you. But in many cases, you couldn't be further from the truth. It can cost more, sometimes a lot more. And there's kind of two separate costs that hit directors once they're in liquidation that are more common than others. And these costs sometimes, they're not really mentioned in any great detail. Now, most directors, they rush into liquidation because they want it over with quickly. Now, in my opinion, they don't ask enough questions, or they don't know what questions to ask. And running through this process can cost you a hell of a lot more in the long run. Now, today, I'm going to show you what those two costs are, and I'm going to show you exactly what to do so you don't get any nasty surprises down the line. Now, let's start with mistake number one. It's the fee mistake, and it's kind of like the headline fee versus the total cost to you as a director, because they're two very separate things. Now, when a director rings around insolvency practitioners for a quote to liquidate a business, or you're filling some forms on Google, you're going to be told anywhere from £1,500 to £7,500 plus VAT, depending on who you speak to. And it's like, well, every insolvency practitioner should be doing the same job. How can those costs vary dramatically? Now, I want you to remember this. This figure is just the cost to get your company into liquidation, okay? It's the figure that covers things like the IPs for running the process of getting it into liquidation, filing paperwork with Companies House, informing HMRC, managing the creditors meeting, liaising with creditors, realising any company assets, distributing out to creditors, and then closing the company. It covers the absolute basics. Now, the costs that decide whether you come out of this with your finances intact are ones that this headline figure doesn't actually touch. The personal exposures that generally get triggered by the insolvency, so they come after the point of going into liquidation. Now, I know this because I've been through my own insolvency. Remember, guys, I'm not an insolvency practitioner. I run the UK's #1 director advisory. So we help directors understand what their options are, and we also help people understand what the pitfalls might be. Now, what happened for me is, I did what most directors do, you know, compare quotes, phone loads of people, pick one that felt sensible. And I thought that I understood everything, and I didn't. I didn't understand what it was going to cost me in the end. And like I said before, every insolvency practitioner has got the same rules to follow, but they've all got very different approaches. Some insolvency practitioners are, you know, they approach it with a genuine willingness to work with a director. Like, they're really transparent from the start about fees, about problems. I saw one from a big firm on LinkedIn the other day. He was saying, yeah, we had a director come to us who'd never had his overdrawn loan account explained, and he's gone into liquidation and it's cost him a lot more. And that's a really common problem. And you've got other firms who don't want to discuss any of these issues until they've been appointed. And okay, listen, they've all got to follow their interpretation of the rules, right? But choosing an insolvency practitioner on that headline fee, it's a bit like choosing a surgeon based on what the operation's going to cost without asking anything about any recovery or aftercare costs. The fee is just one number. The total cost of the experience of insolvency is shaped far more by the things that the headline cost doesn't mention. So the first thing to fix when you're comparing IPs is, what are you actually comparing them on? Is it apples for apples? Because guess what? It shouldn't just be on the headline figure, which is the cost to liquidate. It should be on what's the total cost for everything to you as a director. Which actually brings me to the point of the two specific costs you need to understand before you make any kind of decisions. Now, let me walk you through both of these costs, and I'll show you how they landed on a real director I work with. Obviously, I'll change the guy's name. The first is your overdrawn director's loan account. Now, if you have taken money out of the company over the years that wasn't on payroll or declared as a formal dividend, it's going to sit as a loan from the company to you. I'll tell you where you can find that out. Pull up your balance sheet on Xero, QuickBooks, Sage, Free Agent, whatever that is, right? And in the asset section, it should tell you where your director's current account is. It might be in the debtors section, but there'll be a line as to whether you owe the company money or not. If you don't have up-to-date management accounting software, you might have to go back to your last set of accounts and see if you have an overdrawn loan account. If you've got an overdrawn loan account in your last set of accounts and you've continued to take money out of the company that isn't via the payroll, there's a good chance that that figure's increased, okay? But the moment that your company enters into liquidation, that balance is an asset that the insolvency practitioner is legally required to recover from you personally. That is their job, okay? Now, the issue I've had over the years is not everybody is completely transparent about that from day one. And I get a lot of hate about this. You know, people throw stones at me, right? But that's the truth, okay? You've got some firms who are really transparent and forthcoming with this information, what it's going to mean to you. And you've got some that don't really talk about it until it's time to talk about it, which is generally a horrible surprise for you. Now, liquidators do have the discretion to settle these claims for less than the face value, depending on your ability to repay them. So let's say there's a £50,000 overdrawn director's loan account. It can be settled for 20 grand. It can be settled for 15 grand, for 5 grand, for 2 grand. In some cases, it gets written off entirely if there's nothing realistic to recover from the insolvency practitioner. Let me explain why that happens, right? Let's say that you are in rented accommodation and you have no disposable income, like literally you are struggling to make ends meet every month. You may have a director's loan account where you owe the company money, but you cannot afford to pay any of it back. Now, the insolvency practitioner has got to do their investigations. They've got to check you are in rented accommodation. They're going to probably want to see your bank statements. They're going to want to see an income and expenditure. But if they can realistically see that you can't get blood out of a stone, it's highly likely they will write it off and go, well, I can't recover this from the director. I'm certainly not going to be spending thousands of pounds in legal fees. Therefore, I'm not going to pursue it. By the way, there might be some tax implications personally on this side. Please speak to your accountant about that. But let's say that you are in a house with worth £1 million and it's got no mortgage. Well, that £50,000 that you owe is recoverable. And that insolvency practitioner, if you don't come to them with an agreeable figure to repay, highly likely they're going to start legal action against you because they will be able to recover that full balance from you, okay? Now, these outcomes, they don't happen automatically. Like, it's a negotiation. You've got to be willing to have a conversation with an insolvency practitioner about how much you can afford to pay back. You've got to be willing to sort of push back on things that you can't afford. You've got to be willing to sort of show them why your offer is a realistic figure to settle. And generally speaking, it's about bankruptcy. If you can offer the insolvency practitioner more than they reasonably would get in a bankruptcy proceedings, there's a good chance that they're going to accept it. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Now, the second problem that people face, the second cost they're sometimes not completely aware of, is when you want to buy assets back from the insolvency practitioner. Because a lot of directors may want to continue trading in some form or other. So they want to buy some of the company's assets. It could be vans, it could be equipment, stock, you know, customer list, database, that type of thing. Now, it's completely legal, provided it's done properly at a fair market value, okay? So you have got to be paying what these assets are worth so the creditors can't criticise you. You don't want to be taking assets out of the business too cheaply. It's a transaction undervalue. It's a big problem. But I believe the purchase price you offer and the payment terms that you get for those assets, they can both be negotiable. Now, I'll tell you how both of these things landed on a director I worked with. Let's call him Mark, right? Mark was heading into liquidation. He had an overdrawn loan account. It was about £65,000 and he wanted to buy 3 of the company's vans. Now, apparently the vans were worth £20,000 according to a website that he'd been directed to by the firm that he was talking to. Now, the firm that he was about to sign notices with, they had the lowest quote to liquidate. It was £2,500 for the liquidation. And that was the number that Mark was focused on. He was about to sign notices, must have seen my ugly mug somewhere, and he decided to call us first. Now, here's what the two hidden costs would have looked like if Mark hadn't have understood them going in. Now, when he told us about the DLA, I said, listen, I'm never here to slate anyone. Let me make that really clear. And I always sense check if there's another firm, vying for the business. We never slag anyone off. But I just give him advice. I said, well, try and push that firm on what that director settlement might look like. And obviously they can't commit to any settlements until they've been appointed. But essentially he was told, listen, you're going to have to pay £35,000 within 3 months or we're probably going to make you bankrupt, okay? So if Mark hadn't understood how to negotiate a settlement based on what the IP could realistically recover in bankruptcy, that figure could have pushed him towards losing his house. Now the vans, he was basically told to go onto this, a website that buys vans, and it suggested that the value of the vans were 21,000, and the firm wanted that cash up front. Now Mark didn't have that money straight away, so let's add it up: 35 grand for the director's loan account, 21 grand for the vans. So it was over 56,000 of costs sitting behind a £2,500 headline fee. Now what actually happened was, when Mark spoke to us, we sort of went through things with him in great detail. And we sort of presented to an insolvency practitioner that if you was to make this chap bankrupt, okay, you're going to get very little back, okay, because he had a bit of equity in his house. He was married. His wife had nothing to do with the company, but he had a lot of personal debt. Now, when you went through a cost of making somebody bankrupt, they were going to get very little. Like, people don't realise bankruptcy is expensive. You've got legal fees, you've got the cost of petitioning, you've got something called the trustee and bankruptcy cost. It all swallows up what fees could eventually be paid back to creditors. And anyway, he managed to settle his director's loan account at £12,000, and guess what? He got 6 months to pay it. And he did it by showing the insolvency practitioner what they would likely realise if they made him bankrupt, okay? And we suggested that he actually got the vans valued by an independent agent, because the problem with these websites, you know yourself, you put your details in the website, you go and see the website company, and then they'll walk around your car or van saying, well, that's not right, this is not right, and that figure that they put there ends up down here. Now, when he got the independent valuation, they come back at 11,000 quid. And the reason why it were almost half what this website had said is the vans were knackered. They were builders' vans. They were not in a great state. And we helped him get terms to pay for the vans, so he paid them over 3 months. Same director, same circumstances, same headline fee, very different outcome. Now, the difference for this guy was preparation. Arming him with the facts, helping him negotiate, knowing what to look like before a single piece of paper got signed, which is why the most important work for a director in insolvency doesn't have to happen after the IP's appointed. That's really the IP's work. For you as a director, it's got to happen before. Now, for me, there are some specific things you need to do in that window between going, oh dear, I need to liquidate a business, and formally appointing an insolvency practitioner. Now, please do not get this bit twisted, right? I am not saying that you delay appointing an insolvency practitioner, because remember, when you become insolvent with no hope of recovery, you have got to treat your creditors fairly. You cannot make things worse for your creditors. But helping someone prepare to Mark's £56,000 in 3 months over some terms he could stick to, okay? Now, there's some things, some very specific things that you can do in that window, right? Now, I'm not saying delay appointing an insolvency practitioner, but there's some things that you need to understand before you appoint anyone. There's a window between deciding you need to liquidate and formally appointing an insolvency practitioner. Now, directors who race through this because they want the thing over and done with miss things out all the time, okay? The 2 specific things I want to make sure that you do are these. The first, if you've got an overdrawn loan account, get an understanding of what type of settlement figure might be acceptable. Now, please understand this. An insolvency practitioner cannot commit to a figure until they've been appointed, until they've done all the relevant investigation work. But you know what? An experienced IP will talk you through how these issues are generally approached and maybe what's realistic. They might even explain to you how similar cases have been handled in the past. Now, again, they can't formally commit to a settlement before they're appointed. The rules don't allow them. But some will give you a realistic ballpark figure. Some, by the way, will refuse to commit to anything, okay? They'll say, listen, I can't comment on that until I've looked at all the numbers. I mean, this is where working with someone like Director First is enormously helpful. Like, we have dealt with thousands of these situations over the years. We will help you understand what an insolvency practitioner will likely realise in a bankruptcy scenario based on you telling us everything. Tell us everything, and we can give you an idea what a settlement might look like. Now, you know what? If anything that I've said so far has made you think I might want to talk to this funny looking bald chap with specs, go to the comment section. There is a link at the top. Put your details in. One of my team will call you today. We've got, I don't know, 765-star reviews on Trustpilot. No one has the reviews that we have. If you don't want to talk to somebody, I kind of understand that. The link below it will give you a free guide to insolvency, right? Anyway, back to the video. The second thing I want you to do is understand what you can negotiate on the assets that you want to buy back. So if you want to buy back vans, equipment, you know, anything like that, it's a negotiation, it's not a fixed price. Now, before you enter into any insolvency proceedings, you want to know what the valuation's based on. Is it the IP's own view? Is it an independent valuer's view? What payment terms are available, or are they asking for cash up front? Is there any flexibility on this? Now, the IP who's quoted you the cheapest fee may quote you the highest asset price and they might want it straight away. You need to see the whole picture, not just one line of it. And what I would advise is you get your own independent valuation done. Might cost you some money, right? But you'll get a report done and they'll have an in situ figure and an ex situ figure. The ex situ figure is always less than the in situ figure. But what that in situ figure is, they believe, the agent believes that's what it is worth to you as the director to purchase it back, okay? Now, if you offer the in situ figure, or close to that in situ figure, it's really hard for anyone to criticise you as the insolvency practitioner. And there's a good chance you'll be able to get some terms with the insolvency practitioner. I would be getting this valuation done up front, okay? And getting your IP in the conversation about it before you've made the appointment. Now, these things for Mark helped him understand what the true cost of the insolvency was up front, so he could plan and prepare. Not so he could delay, so he could get a better picture of what was about to happen. Now, when you started the video, you probably thought the cost of an insolvency practitioner felt like a quote, okay? 5 grand, 6 grand, whatever the number is. You now know it isn't always the real cost. The real cost is the fee to get it into liquidation, plus any settlements, plus any assets that you're looking to buy back. Now, I hope you found the video helpful, right? If you want to find out more about what a pre-pack looks like when you buy assets back and valuations and payment terms, go and look at that video over there. Thanks for your time, Chris Worden.